Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're here on the Tech Trailblazers Founders on Fire podcast series, where we get an opportunity to meet with some of our winners from last year. So without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce you to Hannes Gredler, who is the CTO and founder of RtBrick, who is one of our winners from last year. They won the Networking Trailblazers, and he is here with me today with Richard Brandon, who's VP of Strategy at RtBrick. Hello, gentlemen. Great that you could join us.
Hi, thanks for having us.
No problem at all. No problem at all. So obviously winners last year in networking. So perhaps this is a question for either of you, whoever wants to dive in. Could you tell us a little bit about RtBrick and what technology you guys are wowing the networking world with?
Sure. Shall I just kind of kick off very briefly and leave Hannes to answer the harder questions? We're as you say, we're in the networking space, specifically focused to telcos and operators. Mm-hmm. And really the most unusual thing about us is that we're in what's called disaggregated networking. So networking starting to go the way that computing went decades ago, which is that you buy your hardware and your software from different companies and you run one on top of the other. So we're in that space and we're doing the software part. So basically building telco routers, competing with lots of big household names, running on what's a very interesting space, which is open hardware. And Hannes, maybe you can talk a bit about kind of why that's happened now, and if that's such a good idea, why didn't it happen 20 years ago?
I guess it all started a little bit out starting 2008, 2009, where we started to see that there is an emerging segment of merchant silicon, right? So companies like Broadcom and the like started to put out really chipsets, not just basic Ethernet, but more what I call feature-rich Ethernet, having IPv6, MPLS routing capabilities, and all the things, advanced classification engines, all the things that you need to build a solid edge router product. I've been working at the time at a large router vendor, and with some concern, we saw how that trajectory from product generation to product generation was evolving. It was not just that the chips were relatively cheap. In fact, 10% of if we have built this in-house, it is also every generation we saw speeds getting larger, faster, better, power footprint getting lower, and still more features, more onboard lookup memory, larger tables, larger buffers, larger everything. And once you interpolate that line, we thought, we were obviously at the time very proud about building our own ASICs at the router vendor, but we could clearly see the intersection course where those merchant silicon providers are a little bit leveling the playing field and giving here really proper packet forwarding silicon to build a fully fledged router. And we had several rounds of discussions, and at some point, I came to the conclusion with Praveen Bandekar, which was my product manager at that router vendor. Hey, those guys, it's not just chips. Those guys need software, particularly a networking software, a management stack, a routing protocol stack. This would be just the perfect opportunity to build something like this. This is basically the inception of RtBrick and how we started the company.
Fantastic. So a big step for you both, you and your co-founder, to step into the startup world when you'd been, in a corporation, which was, I guess, if it's that type of technology, is reasonably large. What made you finally jump ship? or jump into this new opportunity, this new ship?
It was actually interesting. I remember it was mid-February, and there was a big birthday party of one of my daughters, and a big extended family came in, and including my own godfather. And at the time, FedEx was just ringing the doorbell and delivering a small package, which was actually a patent plate, right? So every time when you file a patent and after it gets approved by the US Patent Office, you get this small token of appreciation. You get that little patent plate. So I was unfolding that and showing and said, yeah, I was doing this. And my godfather always used to be a really a businessman, right? And he was then asking, how does this all work with patents and stuff? And they say, yeah, I'm doing this, and I get a small bonus and all of that. And he started then going a little bit into inquiry mode and said, well, so you are doing all the thinking, right? And basically that employer is reaping all the benefits of that, right? And how many patents have you been doing? I said, yeah, about 30 or so. And he was totally puzzled and said, well, why don't you do that, something like this by yourself, right? And this really got me thinking.
So, but you did have a lot of plugs by the end of it, though, let's be honest.
We did.
You had a whole wall of them. And a lot of appreciation.
Yes.
But now, obviously, you've got some more plugs on the wall, hopefully, and move that forward. And interesting, before we kind of started recording this, you were talking about Richard's involvement in the journey. So when did that start? You mentioned that you brought in, as a first-time entrepreneur, and obviously probably with your godfather going, come on now. He hopefully was helping you after causing all this problem by saying, look, do it for yourself. And then he goes, bye, I'll see you at the next birthday party.
I have to admit, running a company is a little bit like parenting, right? And just like with your first child, right?
Stressful.
The first child gets exposed to the full incompetence of the parents, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, my co-founder Praveen and myself, we had a strong engineering and technical background. We knew what it takes to get the product right. But pretty much everybody that we've been talking to is told us, to said, look, do not too much think about your fancy technology, right? That's clearly one part of the ingredient for success, but it's not really the most important ingredient. It's more about channel distribution, strategy, basically how to get multipliers, right, for the technology that we are trying to build and go to market. And we just looked at each other and said, look, I have absolutely no idea. I have not done this before. So whom do we know, right? Let me call Richard, right? He has done this at Cisco, at Juniper. So he has probably some idea how to get this right. And let's see if he has got appetite doing it once again at a really a small startup setting.
Yeah, and it turned out he did have appetite. So here I am.
He's still here too, so you do have an appetite. Yeah. So obviously you guys work well together. You had worked together previously, so you already had a good working relationship, because clearly you wouldn't be bringing someone on board that you didn't have a great working relationship and mutual respect. So obviously that's a little while ago. How has the business grown? Because obviously you're talking about the telco service providers, so that always smacks to me of long lead time.
I think that's a very good place to start. It is a long lead time business. It's not very easy for these guys to change things, to change their operational environment. It's easy to get frustrated as a vendor, even a big vendor. It's like you've got some new hot technology, and it seems to take years to get it into the network. And it's not a good match. It's not a typical match for a small company like us. And when small companies like us do start playing in the telco space, normally it's with small telcos. It's kind of a natural fit. But we rather bucked that trend with our first customer being Europe's largest telco, which is Deutsche Telekom. And
I've heard of them, yes.
Yeah, that's obviously fantastic. But it also, they have challenged us. I think it's fair to say they're a very large company. They have very exacting standards. They have very high quality standards when it comes to engineering, as you would expect. And I guess that's been a sort of hard, but also a bit of a blessing. I mean, Hannes has had to deal with the engineering requirements over the years, that when we do go to the next customer and you go, well, we've already done it for Deutsche Telekom, that's a good conversation starter.
Wow.
I mentioned before the importance of seeking out advice, right? And one fellow founder always has given me the advice. He said, look, when you talk to customers, prospective customers, pretty much everybody is interested in your technology, loves hear about new stuff, kicking the tires. But there is very often you find yourself that you cannot really convert it to a deal. And you need to listen out for certain patterns here, right? And one of those patterns is, hey, I really like your product. Could you imagine adding this and that, right? Which is quite different than to, oh, your product doesn't A, B, C, D, and I cannot deploy this, right? But if you're talking to the former, then there is genuine interest in the product, and it might actually get to a good probability of winning that deal. And this was essentially our first encounter with Deutsche Telekom. I remember we did pitch the network operating system and how scalable and distributed fancy architecture it has to the backbone crew, which always was interested into that kind of technology and routing architecture. And they said, yeah, it's great, I like it, but I really need you to actually run on a hardware forwarder, right? Unless you have a story with 100 terabit forwarder, I'm not really interested in. And at that same presentation, at that same pitch, there was one engineer that said, look, I'm not really sure if you're interested in this, but we have a project of really restarting software-defined networking in the access, right? And given the modular approach that you just showed us, I think this is exactly what we need. Would you actually come over and basically give the same talk to some of my fellow coworkers, because we really think what you have is interesting. So this was a little bit our first pivot. We had a solid networking operating system, more focused on routing related problems. And then they said, look, we have a real need now for the access, for the edge. There is L3 VPN, L2 VPN, residential access, all those protocols in addition to the backbone protocols. And it paid very well off to listen to the customer and actually follow on that path.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, Cameron.
No, sorry, Rose. I think, to pick up on Hannes's initial point, there's like that. What you're getting is that little signal, which is not just, well, we'd like you to do what we can get at the moment, but perhaps for less money. But there's something we can't do right now that we'd really love to do. There's something missing, and that's, I guess, where we pivoted into that space, and it's been a good idea.
Well, it sounds like you've already possibly given some of the advice I would be asking for, but what other advice would either of you give to people starting out on what seems like, from what you've said, almost impossible to be competing at this sort of level with this type of technology from the ground up, So it sounds like you've had quite a, pardon the Tyrolean pun here, but a mountain to climb.
I would say there is two interesting phases, right? Phase number one is product definition phase. What let's say networking architects think they need, right? And actually, the far more interesting phase is getting deployed into the network, right? Then all of a sudden you see, hey, oh, there is certain operational things, right? We need better telemetry support. Maybe a machine learning thing would not too bad. Monitoring all those 300,000 optical modules, right? So when the first phase, right, the product definition phase, and the second phase are too much apart, it's going to be a problem, right? And I would say, especially with large companies, they tend there's almost too much space in between, right? In the tier 2, tier 3 markets, you most often talk to the guys who do the networking architecture and actually run operations, and you got the full picture right from the beginning. With large shops, large carriers, you sometimes realize very late in the game of what yet is missing in your product. So I would say my advice would be get very early, look out for those customers who can really give you the early proof that at least your MVP is complete and works, because otherwise you're losing another 12 months, right?
Yeah, nobody wants to do that in the startup journey for sure. Okay. Richard, how about from your side?
Yeah, I think there's there's a few things, but possibly one of the things that I think you see a lot with innovative companies and companies that are kind of first into their area or early into their area is, I'd just say, recognize whether what you're trying to communicate and sell is whether your widget is better than the next guy's widget, and in what way, or whether what you're trying to do is to say this is a new category. And actually, people often sort of jump over that bit and forget that I really have to persuade you in the first place to do something completely different before you even go, what's the best widget for my job here? And, I think it's a bit like the electric car market, I suppose. There's very, very occasionally you get these huge shifts where you're not really buying the same product at all anymore. And that's our case with disaggregated networking. There's not much point going out there saying, look, we've got the best routing operating system around, until somebody has decided they actually want to buy a routing operating system different from the routing hardware. And so it's easy to kind of get confused and muddle all that stuff together. And I suppose I'm thinking more of as from a communications point of view, really, but also from a route to market. It changes the partnerships. We're traditional router vendors, which Hannes has worked for and I've worked for. You always sell the whole thing as one big piece of hardware with the software integrated. So suddenly it opens up opportunities to be partnering with the independent hardware guys and the whole world of system integrators, which has been kind of a commoditized market, really. It's like I can buy my XYZ router from one guy the same as I can from another. Suddenly these guys can plug everything together and actually add a load more value. So, the category itself becomes almost as important for you to champion as what have you done inside your own engineering team.
Wow.
I really like that car analogy, by the way, Richard, because if you look at it, right, what Tesla and friends are doing, they're really looking the car as almost like an IT integration problem, right? There are several subsystems, entertainment, telemetry, keeping everything on track, right? Some of those components they build in-house, some they do outsourcing, but they're really good in integrating those different subsystems, right? Versus, I would say, German traditional car manufacturer way of thinking. Oh, everything has to build around a wonderful, I don't know, 6-cylinder engine, 400 horsepower, transmission chain and everything. And all about that electronic stuff, yeah, that's head on, right? And what has been happening here in the car industry, that add-on is now really the core piece, right? And I'm really looking forward that such a thing happens in the disaggregating world as well, because if you look at it, we don't really build our own chips. So we really need to be good in integrating new chips faster, right? We need to build that software abstraction in the right way that we quickly can onboard a chip in 1/4 of development time, right? Same thing, new optical subsystems, all this additional hardware that we don't manufacture and design. So really, building a router has become pretty much the same an IT integration problem, right? Rather than, hey, let's build the greatest monolith.
Oh, so with that, I mean, that interesting area, isn't it? There is so much that's changing in technology, and I very much get what you're saying there with regards to categories. Everybody goes, well, that nobody needs that, and then suddenly it's the hot potato that everybody can't get enough of. And you also talked about sort of like the education for the industry, and I noticed that you actually launched a manifesto very recently for that area. So
yeah.
Practicing what you preach there, I think.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think we talk about it a lot internally, and we just sort of felt it was worth putting a sort of statement out there, for everyone in the industry. And there's obviously different sort of audiences for that. The operators are key customers. I think a lot of those guys, we were talking earlier today on another call, Hannes and myself. We're sort of at this chasm. They all know about disaggregation. Most of them are looking at it with various degrees of research projects, lab work. Some of them are actually implementing it. And I don't think you'll find any of them that go, we don't think it's a good idea. They all sort of see the sunny uplands and kind of go, yeah, that's where we want to go. But there's this, to use the old cliche, there's this chasm between where they are and where they need to get to. And I suppose, our message to those guys is, sort of use it or lose it. Now's the time to do something because it's ready. You've got people like Deutsche Telekom doing it in their edge. You've got people in this. There's a similar company to us called DriveNets that focus on disaggregation in the core. They've got major deployments going on. So it's sort of happening, but I think a lot of people are really hesitant to know whether it's ready for prime time, if you like. And that was part of the reason we decided to put this manifesto out, but also to challenge the other vendors, because it's a strange paradox that one of the great advantages for operators is choice. The idea is that they can go to multiple hardware vendors and pick and choose depending on product availability and price and feature set, and they should be able to go to multiple software vendors. So that's never really been possible in the old world. You really make your decision, and then 7 years later, you're still tied into it. So even though it seems an odd thing for a company to go, we'd like a bit more competition, please. In a way, we'd like a bit more competition, please. We do. We want to see other people in there, and we want to see some of the traditional guys, rather than just kind of going, this doesn't really suit us, this new world, thank you. We'd rather it didn't happen. We'd rather some of those guys embraced it too. So that's kind of part of our thinking towards that manifesto.
Oh, there is a strength in that. And I know certainly with the critical national infrastructure, there's a lot from the security agencies about opening up, the infrastructure to have multiple vendors.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise you're not very resilient.
You're not very,
you've had it.
And it's very hard to change, and that's really not the case in disaggregated networking. It's very easy, as it has been in computing. It's very easy to go, oh well, I can change my server vendor out. That I can mix and match. So I can run 2 different server vendors. That's not hard, and that's never been possible in telco infrastructure until now. I mean, literally never been possible. So that's it's secure supply security. The actual hacking type of security is a factor, and the telco vendor industry in particular has been suffered from a lot of large consolidations. Names that have kind of been absorbed, from Siemens to Alcatel to Lucent. They get absorbed, and you end up as a customer community with less choice, less innovation than you'd like.
Oh, yes, it's a challenge, that's for sure. So any other advice? I mean, obviously you've got to look at investment, you've got to look at how you build your team, keep customers happy, find new customers. Any other little golden nuggets?
I'm going to come up with one more. I don't know, Hans may also be able to add to this, but I think in general, as a small company competing with big companies, then good is often the enemy of best. It's very easy to kind of go, that's a good idea, or somebody's asked us for that feature, we could work with that partner, and they're all good things, but it's really important to take the time to find the best of the good things, because otherwise you just end up using your limited resources without maximizing the output. So it's really easy to chase stuff, and especially when you hire people from bigger companies. I mean, I worked at bigger companies too, so you get used to wanting to be doing a wide spectrum of things, whether it's product features or marketing activities. I want to be in all these countries, and I go to all these events. Well, you can't. You have to be pretty ruthless and kind of go, no, what matters to us is some success here. And that's what we need. And here might be 5 countries. That's fine. It doesn't have to be 25 countries.
Oh, for sure.
And similar here to number one, work actually with people who want to work with you, right? And that actually the best customers that we have on our list and the best engineers that we have found is actually people who have approached us and said, hey, look, this really looks interesting. Can we work together? And I would also absolutely state what Richard has been saying is right. Focus, right? The hardest thing and also the most crucial one is saying no, right? Because in networking, there is the decision tree just grows so quickly, so exponentially, right? You have to think about which target market want we be in, what kind of feature, what chipset support. And if you're, I would say, too permissive on one of those decisions, you instantly have increased the magnitude of your problem by one dimension. So focus, execution, the art of saying no is the most crucial thing, I would say, for survival, in fact. Because otherwise you spread yourself too thin, you get distracted, you become a master of none.
Yeah, good advice. Yeah, good advice. I mean, obviously, from our perspective, we were delighted that you were crowned. Is that the kind of thing that's important for you, to get some recognition sort of outside of your area?
Yeah, it's very important. I think it's important when you're any company, but it's particularly important when you're a smaller startup company. Your biggest challenge is credibility, really, and we're lucky that we can talk publicly about Deutsche Telekom. That's fantastic. There's a large organization who's spent a lot of effort selecting our products. Great, but you want to flesh that out with other awards, recognition. It's important when you look to hire other people, because they look at what's going on and they sort of see this stuff as well. So you get better people as a consequence of those things too. So, I think that these things are fantastic, because it's, any company can sit around and kind of go, look how good we are. Well, trust us, and it's we would say that, wouldn't we? So, having any third party telling the world that they think you're good as well is a fabulous thing.
Well, I'm glad that it's going to be helpful for you guys, and hopefully has been helpful for you guys. So is there anything you can tell us about what's next with RtBrick? Or are we?
In terms of technology, I would say we're now seriously looking into optics. So integrating optics, OpenZR, ZR Plus. Basically, we have typically those $10,000-$15,000 type of hardware boxes from our OEMs. And with those new kind of optical subsystems, we can essentially replace a lot of the long-haul transmission systems, mid-haul transmission systems, and just that use case, that business case immediately goes to green, right? To give you things into perspective, transmitting 100 gigabit signal over, let's say, 100 kilometers, today you need roughly equipment in the order of $50,000-$60,000, right? Now with open networking equipment, our MOS on top of that, and third-party optics, you can achieve pretty much the same for half the price. So there is a lot of cost revolution coming also with open networking. And this is where you will see, I would say, a lot of not just announcements, but product availability.
Right. Well, it's been delightful to have you both with us here today. Very insightful. So today I have been joined by Richard Brandon, VP of Strategy, and Hannes Gredler, who is founder and CTO of our Networking Trailblazer winner, RtBrick. And for all of you who've joined us, that is the Tech Trailblazers podcast for the founders on fire. And you can find out more at www.techtrailblazers.com, or you can follow us on X at TechTrailblaze, or find us on LinkedIn. Thanks very much for joining us. See you next time.